Please welcome to the stage ALEC Chief Executive Officer Lisa B. Nelson.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody had a fantastic evening. Hopefully you didn't get too rained out at the welcome reception. How about Governor Ron DeSantis yesterday? Wasn't that amazing? Someone said to me this morning he felt like he was home. So I hope that we made him feel that way. He's amazing. Some of us are lucky enough to witness his work on a regular basis, but as a Floridian who works closely with the man, I can tell you it only gets better. Before we kick off this morning events, I'd like to welcome Scott Wall of the Capitol Commission's Texas State Minister to lead us in the morning prayer.
Thank you, Lisa and Courtney and all those who allow us to be here. We're grateful to be here. I am Scott Wall. I'm the state minister in Texas. We got several of my Texas legislators here. I figure my role as state minister is to try to help our legislators live in reality. I don't know if you know any legislators, but they don't always live in reality. Many times, about half of them people tell them they're the worst thing in the world, and the other half, people are telling them the most wonderful thing in the world, and neither one of those are true. And so I figure my job is to remind people of reality while I'm in the Capitol, and I think the reality is that true joy comes with doing what God wants us to do. And I'll just reference real quickly Philippians 1. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to pray here in just a second about joy. But I wanted to mention in Philippians chapter 1, it says that Paul is writing from prison, and he has joy. When we are doing the things that God wants us to do, I believe that we can have joy. When you're in the legislature or you are dealing with policy, sometimes that's your focus, is to pass legislation, get certain policies passed. Those are good things. You want to be responsible and do those things. But if they don't, then you get angry, you get frustrated, you get sad, whatever it is. And sometimes you get attacked and you start to lose your joy. I believe we have happiness when things go well, we have sadness when things go poorly, but we can have joy when we're doing what God wants us to do. Philippians, Paul is writing from prison, and he says, I have joy even though I'm in prison. He said, because I got an opportunity to share the gospel with all the people who are guards in the Praetorian Guard, the Caesar's Guard from Rome. They're here. I got a captive audience. They're chained to me. They can't leave. I get to share the gospel. I have a lot of joy because of the way that God is working this out. But I don't think he was happy he was there, but I think he had joy. And I want to pray for joy. I want to pray that we remind ourselves of why we're doing what we're doing. I had time with a legislator from Arkansas. I won't mention her because I didn't ask if I had permission. I met with her yesterday, and she said when she came into the legislature, she was ready to change the world and make a big impact and make all these big decisions and was doing everything she could. But she realized as she's been in the legislature for a while that really what she needs to focus upon is loving her colleagues. And she has joy in the midst of that. And I could see that joy in her heart. And she wants to still do good legislation. That's why we're here, is to work on legislation. But ultimately, our joy comes from doing what God wants us to do, and that is loving him and loving others. So let me pray for joy today. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we know that we can have joy. We thank you for the joy that you give us. We thank you that the joy comes from doing what you created us to do. That's to love you and to love others, and to share the good news of your Son, Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for us. We thank you for that opportunity in the midst of very challenging times in the legislature as we go through different arguments and laying out legislation and all the different interactions that we have with people. You give us those opportunities. As we're here, help us to stay focused upon that so our joy continues to grow. God, we thank you for all your many blessings that you allow us to do these things. We thank you for the blessings of food that we're eating. And we ask that you bless our food to the nourishment of our bodies so that we can continue to serve you. Ask your blessings upon ALEC and all the efforts and everything that's gone into this conference. that would be pleasing to you as well. We thank you for all the people who have put hard work into this. Ask you to protect them, guide them, strengthen them, so they can continue to fulfill what you've called them to do here this week. So we give this time to you and our food. In your Son Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Scott. That was lovely. And I will say, as somebody who loves what I do, this job brings me joy every day. So thank you for those words. And I know our legislators have a great time in the work that they do. You know, everyone wants to make their mark, as Scott just talked about. Every legislator wants to make their mark in the states, to leave an impression on their corner of the world, whether it be science, philosophy, entertainment, or politics. We all strive to make our impact in our field. One man who made an impact the size of the Grand Canyon in his field is Dr. Arthur Laffer. Created back in 1974 during a meeting with Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, and a few others, Dr. Arthur Laffer grabbed a napkin to sketch out the relationship between tax rates and tax revenues. Known as the Laffer curve, it served as the inspiration for Reaganomics, the Bush tax cuts in the early 20s, and the Trump tax cuts of 2017. The primary author of our flagship publication, Rich States, Poor States, Dr. Laffer was also the inspiration for ALEC's Art Laffer Award for Economic Excellence, which is over there, which the governor referenced yesterday. He was one of the recipients. And for those who haven't had the privilege, one of the best things about Dr. Laffer is his desire to spread that joy and economic truth, almost like the gospel, to every CEO, every college class, every political leader who is willing to listen. Joining him on the stage today is a former student from his days at the University of Southern California. She soon became sought-after star by the Wall Street banks and hedge funds alike. And then in 2014, when her employer said no to actively managing her own exchange-based funds based on disruptive innovation, she said, "I'm just going to disrupt the street even more by striking out on my own." It's been nothing short of an unrivaled success. She's reached beyond the world of Wall Street and into the world of education with the Innovation Foundation, which she lovingly cares for, an institution focused on the future of education. They concentrate on bringing innovation to the classroom, creating an innovative mindset and establishing excitement for lifelong learning. I don't want to break the news, but that cello is going to have more of a story. There's a reason that there was a cello playing. Kathy Wood is a disruptor, an innovator, and according to Bloomberg News, the best stock picker of the street. I'm also told if you in the audience demonstrate the proper level of enthusiasm, she'll take over all of our retirement accounts and make sure that we all get rich. Leading our conversation this morning will be our national chairman, the next Speaker of the House, Florida House of Representatives Danny Perez. Please join me in welcoming this amazing panel this morning. Art Laffer, Kathy Wood, and Danny Perez.
Seat. Yeah, we did that on purpose.
I asked for it on purpose.
Dr. Laffer says the short guy got the pillow. Well, thank you guys for being here with me and with the audience. This truly is a dream come true, and I've spent quite an amount of time with both of them, and everything Lisa said is true and more. So we'll get right into it. We're going to start the morning real hot. We go 100 miles an hour out of the gate here at ALEC. We're not going to slow step anything. So I did want to start with a softball question here. Obviously, with the economy being in question, the future being in question as to where it's going to go, the inflation, where it's at, what are your thoughts? We're going to start with Ms. Wood here, Kathy. A little bit of a softball open-ended question. What are you forecasting here in the near future with the economy?
So we are expecting a little bit more of a harder landing than I think a lot are. And we expect inflation and interest rates to come down. I think the reason the stock market is going up right now is that it is looking through these last few interest rate increases And it is also looking into some deflationary forces, many of them associated with innovation, and I think feeling better about the longer term outlook.
Dr. Laffer?
First, I want to just say how wonderful it is with you, Danny, and you, Kathy. Kathy was the most amazing person as a student. She was an undergraduate, and she petitioned to get into my graduate class. She did. God knows my life has changed forever since then. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you,
it's just
Art.
great. I'm going to answer the question a little differently, if I can. And I'm going to answer it in Ray, Kathy. Kathy has invested in all of these, I mean, really earth-shaking innovation disruptors. One of the areas I think is going to play a huge role is in cryptocurrencies and what's going to happen. I know none of you remember, but prior to 1913, the monetary system of the United States was privately run. It was not a government. Now, the government defined what a dollar was, 1/20th of an ounce of gold and 1 ounce of silver. But then minting was done by the government as well as private mints. Currencies were all private bank script. I mean, all of that. I think that this allows us, Kathy, to come back to a new era. We're moving to a new era where private monies will start being very important. And I think that will be the end of the huge inflation era that occurred with government-run money. I mean, it's just incredible. I think prices since 1932 are up 2,300%. I mean, that's just incredible. I think we're coming into a new era that will be, because of a lot of your companies, Kathy, will be an era of stable prices and great prosperity.
If you want to hear more about this, Art and I and one of our partners did a podcast on this topic, and it was fabulous. And I will also say that I wouldn't be where I am without Art, not only because of what he taught me in economics, but also he introduced me to my first position in the industry. And I've been so grateful to him. I gave him 1% of my company when I started it.
I think I'm the largest outside owner other than Nico Securities, or who is it?
Yes.
I don't count them, but.
Well, Dr. Laffer, I mean, going to that, you obviously have had so many mentees. You have seen so much talent in this country. What set Kathy apart from everyone else?
Well, there have been a couple of others like Kathy. I don't know if any of you know the Sinkfields, or they were. I mean, if you look at Joel Citron, there have been a number of my students that have been very successful in spite of me, and it's wonderful. But Kathy has this drive. I know of no person who puts more effort, more energy, more work into discovering what companies do and how they do it. I think Kathy is the single best stock picker in Wall Street. I really do believe that.
That's good.
And have always.
And it is our research team. I mean,
Yeah, but you make the
incredible
research team.
Which, by the way, I don't know if you visited the office in the state of Florida, in St. Petersburg, Dr. Laffer. I know, are you still in Tennessee?
I've always Tennessee.
Right. So Dr. Laffer in the rich states, poor states, such a believer, such a guru behind that, climbing the ranks every single year, has not been convinced yet to move to Florida. Is a believer in Tennessee, as am I, we all are, but in Florida, we're very fortunate that we have Kathy Wood in St. Petersburg investing her life, her company into our own backyard. And so on behalf of Florida, we're forever thankful for that, Kathy. But I want to get into some questions here, because if not, we're just going to keep chatting. We're going to forget that everyone is in front of us. But with innovation and technology increasing at such a fast pace, what are some of the thoughts that you have on ARC's focus moving forward here over the next several years?
So on innovation specifically, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. We believe that during the next 5 to 10 years, 5 innovation platforms will be hitting prime time, all at the same time. And those are multi-omic sequencing in the life science space, robotics, energy storage, artificial intelligence, and blockchain technology. They're going to transform our lives. In 5 to 10 years, you can see from your children and grandchildren how quickly these technologies are evolving, and they are converging. We think in terms of the stock market, if you want to bottom line it, we think they're valued in the global public and private equity markets today at about $15 trillion, a little bit more than 10% of global GDP. And we think that 15 trillion is going to scale to 200 trillion plus during the next 5 to 10 years. Yes, that's a 40% compound annual rate, and it is because of the convergence of these technologies. They're explosive, each one alone, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about 3D printing in this context. We have here Hattie, the firm that is using robotics and 3D printing to make furniture. 30 minutes to make this now, going down to 10 minutes as robotics and artificial intelligence converge through this 3D printing technology. And the cello there, Alfred described to me, I don't know where it is now, but
it was here. I don't know where.
Art has his eye on it, I should say. The cello, usually it takes 5 months to make a wooden cello. That took 5 hours. And the sound, and it weighs 30% less, and the sound for students, I mean, and it costs $600 instead of $6,000. This is what's going to happen. This is a preview, and I know there Ultimate 3D Stores is here as well and is giving away a 3D printer out there. I think, is there a raffle or something?
I think so. I think so.
Yes. You'll get a good view of what this new world is going to be like.
It is super cool, and I mean, and when you're touching this, I would have never known it's coming from a 3D printing technology.
All recyclable. Children, students, they become passionate with this sort of technology, and we know that because through the Education Foundation, we did a 3D printing seminar, a drone seminar. And we give people, children, students, even, especially socioeconomic disadvantaged, a dream to pursue. So, very exciting.
Dr. Laffer, I'm skeptical on asking you about innovation and technology, and I'm going to tell you why. I don't know if you guys know this, but Dr. Art Laffer is single-handedly keeping the flip phone industry alive. So it's very tough for me to be able to ask you about technology when, the flip phone era, Dr. Laffer, I love you, but I want to say I was probably in diapers when the flip phone came out. So, Dr. Laffer, going to what Kathy is talking about, 3D printing, the future, it's moving so quick, it really is. What are your thoughts on that as we kind of move forward?
I've been involved with Kathy for a long, long time. She went to whatchamacallit funds in LA.
Capital.
Yeah, capital funds there. Kathy, I've been following all the companies, and just for my modernness, I've been investing in all this stuff with Kathy all the way along, and I am just enthralled with productivity. Bluebird, Tesla, what was the first price that you got Tesla at?
Oh my goodness, on the split adjusted today's price, it would probably be $3.
$3 a share, can you imagine that? If you get NVIDIA, Illumina, these are all a group of companies that Kathy over the years have done that I've been involved in. So just because I'm old, and just because I drool, and just because I forget things, and I have a flip phone, I don't have do email, and I don't own a computer, don't think I'm not as modern as you are, Danny.
All right, I'll take your word for it.
I will, and I'll wrestle you to the floor. I'm like Joe Biden.
No, you.
I'm 3 years older than Joe Biden, if you can believe that.
Wow. I know I can't believe that, but we're not going to get into that right now. But no, I can't believe that, Dr. Laffer. But that's great. I look up to Dr. Laffer so much. We had an event in Florida a couple years ago, and he was kind enough to come down and speak to the Republicans in the House. And I was trying to get a hold of him, but to get a hold of Dr. Laffer, you got to email a guy that then emails another guy that prints out a copy of the email, takes it to Dr. Laffer's house. He takes out a pen from the 1980s, and he checks off which one he's going to meet with and which one he's not. So, but Dr. Laffer, I do want to touch on something that you brought up earlier. And all joking aside, it's something that even I'm a 36-year-old guy, to me is still super confusing. When you're talking about crypto and Bitcoin and what the future looks like for Bitcoin, I'm such an old school guy. The Bitcoin world is something I can't touch it. It's not concrete. I don't know truly what's regulating it or what's not regulating it. Is it in the world? Is it the state? Is it federal? I mean, I have so many questions. If you don't mind, maybe dumbing it down for me on where Bitcoin is today and where you see it going into the future.
Let me, if I can, and it's not dumbing it down because I have all the same questions you do.
Okay.
It's everyone I think we do. Kathy and I are going to do a podcast very soon on exactly these questions. What is the formula? There's a guy who took a Japanese pseudonym and did the formula for Bitcoin, and it has the quantity there. You have the Bitcoin. How do you know there's anonymity? When I give you a $5 bill and you spend it, the guy whom receives the $5 bill from you has no idea that I once owned it. So we need to have anonymity to keep privacy in this world. How do all of those things get done? But the most important one for me that we're going to really focus on is how do you get to a price rule for a Bitcoin so that we can guarantee we have price stability for the time in the future. The whole key on gold that really made gold, the dollar was fixed to gold, and that's what gave the guarantee that price stability for centuries, literally centuries. Britain ran it. How do we get to the Bitcoin there? And Kathy and I are going to do a podcast on that, Kathy, I think pretty soon.
Yes, we are.
And it's the real issue, and it's a lot of technical stuff. And Danny, I know you probably weren't a math major.
I wasn't.
No, just joking.
That is true. You're not wrong, Dr. Laffer. It was political science and barely made it out.
If you can make a mock of my age, I can make my, what can I tell you? But I think this is the area where we really have to look at carefully and see how it's done. And we're going to do that podcast and go through it.
Yeah, if I could just step back and big picture it first. Each one of the words I'm about to say about Bitcoin is important. It is the first global, digital, private, meaning no government oversight, rules-based monetary system in history. It's a very big idea, and Art is right, it is based on a quantity rule right now, so the price is highly volatile.
Yes.
And one of the things we're evolving is thinking around, okay, you have the quantity rule, how do we get to a price rule over time? And so we will delve deeply into it. But we're on record, ARC is on record, we have 3 full-time crypto analysts, and we're gonna get rid of that word crypto, digital asset analysts. So our forecast, Bitcoin's at roughly 30,000 right now. Our forecast, base forecast for 2030 is roughly 650,000. Our bull case is 1.5 million. It is the most important hedge right now, we believe, against inflation and deflation. So inflation is confiscation of wealth. Deflation, with deflation, 08, 09, counterparty risk. These are not problems when it comes to Bitcoin and blockchain technology.
And this is exactly how gold started, because gold is a quantity too. And it was a quantity rule until we started getting systems there that guaranteed the value of gold and stuff. It's the same evolution that you're seeing today in crypto that we saw with the development of money through commodities. I mean, if you know the German word Geld, if you know the word fee, which is the old Anglo-Saxon for cattle, the word salt was salary, where the Romans would put it. All of that's how money evolved to being money. And crypto is a new evolution of a money that is not controlled by government and is anonymous.
Going to one of the principles of ALEC when we're talking about federalism and states' rights, being in the legislature in Florida, when this issue comes up, one of the more common states that I hear from is Wyoming, and how Wyoming, and I don't know if there's anyone here from Wyoming, but when we hear what state is doing it right, they always bring that state up. When we're talking about crypto and states' rights, what are some of the states that have maybe stuck out to you guys as doing things right or doing things wrong? And is there a reason why you believe that has moved the needle in either direction that some of the other states can learn from as they take some of the policies from here back home?
You want me to try?
Why don't you start?
Yeah, I'm working right now on Tennessee, by the way, just for the record. Florida's wonderful. I love Ron DeSantis. I think he's great, super. Danny, you're my hero there, all of that. Tennessee's better.
Why did I know that
when
that
you
was
said
gonna
we
happen?
have the 3rd best credit rating, we have the 1st best. When you say we have the biggest surplus, yes, but we have the biggest surplus relative to our economy. We are putting in a Prop 13 in California. Property taxes are the next big issue, and they are really a big issue. Right now, I've got some papers that I've written on property taxes. They're academic papers, but they really show the superpower and the need to control property taxes in a state. We are now, right now, halfway through a property tax initiative in Tennessee that will limit property taxes much the way Prop 13 did in California in 1978. I was very involved in that. It is the only reason California survives is because of Prop 13. Only reason. But, you know, that's the issue, I think, where you look at it. Look to the future of what you can do, not look to the past as to what you have done. You've got a beautiful challenge in front of you because you have a racehorse, but keep going.
That's a great point. And, you know, property taxes here in Florida are always an issue, especially in Miami-Dade County.
That's right.
You know, we have an elderly population down there, and most of them are on fixed income. So it's a tough issue outside of property insurance. But that's another topic for another day, Dr. Laffer. I don't know if we're going to have time for that one today. But Kathy, is there any state in particular that is standing out to you and kind of leading the charge in the crypto world?
In the crypto world, I think Florida has stood out. Governor DeSantis has said he will not allow a central bank digital currency here. He's much more focused on Bitcoin, and because talk about surveillance and, you know, invasion of privacy. I mean, that's what China's doing, right? And I know a few other states. I know Florida. I'm not as much into the states, but I agree with Art completely on the taxes. We moved ARK Invest from New York to Florida. Taxes, big part of the reason. Also, you know, very progressive state, and welcomed us in, so much so that our foundation, the education foundation called IF, the Innovation Foundation, has evolved a program using ARC's research, made age appropriate by educators, so that in 18 months, we've only been there 18 months, we are the 6th grade science curriculum in all of Pinellas County come this fall. And we think that will spread through the middle school. So we've been embraced not only for ARC, you know, we're trying to change the Tampa Bay region into the new Bay Area, take that from San Francisco on the technology side. I know Hattie moved to St. Pete as well, the 3D printing firm. But we want to make a difference in terms of preparing students for the future. I can't believe, having come from the Northeast, how much arms opened, how much Florida felt that not only on the technology side, but education about technology and innovation generally, how important that is to the state.
And I did. Innovation Foundation is something that I wanted to talk about because we have it here in our own backyard in Florida, and I kind of wanted to ask you, you know, what's the vision moving forward for the Innovation Foundation? A little bit of background on it, which you've given us, but also I wanted for everyone to hear some of the results that we're having with the usage of the foundation here in Florida and in Pinellas County. Because when Kathy and I sat down together in Tallahassee for the first time, and she starts to talk to me about the Innovation Foundation, I wanted to just take it and multiply it times 1,000 as quick as I could, because it's working in Pinellas County. If you don't mind giving the viewers, because that's what we got today. We got viewers. We're live TV here. The viewers, a little bit of a background on what you're doing in Pinellas.
Sure. Again, taking ARC's research on these 5 innovation platforms that are converging and making it age appropriate to inspire students. And we've started with 6th grade because that's where they asked us to. But the vision is toddler through high school, throughout Florida and the United States, public, private, charter, whatever. We think this is a very important initiative, and it has to do with the competitiveness of the United States. As I mentioned, these technologies are moving very rapidly, and they do inspire children. They inspire them at very important moments in their lives. 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, are they going to, you know, basically hitch their wagon, so to speak, onto this new technology and become expert in it? You know, some of these are so new, they're not even being taught in school. So they can really develop, you know, a sense of critical thinking, creativity, and innovation mindset, and really be ahead of the game and look forward to an exciting future, not only for their own families, but really, you know, again, helping America pull way ahead competitively.
That's awesome. You know, I just got an alert, Dr. Laffer, that ever since Kathy Wood gave the projections on Bitcoin, it just went up $5,000.
What? Everything she, on what?
Everything, Bitcoin, just the value of Bitcoin just went up 5,000 since
great.
she gave the projections. So, Dr. Laffer, I wanna pick your brain a little more. What is Dr. Laffer, when you get on your plane, private plane, big 747, Dr. Laffer, it's called Air Laffer.
It's called Southwest Airlines, by the way. It is private, you're right, and it's a big plane, but I share it with about 3 million other people, and I usually get a middle seat.
When Dr. Laffer, when he makes it back to Tennessee, you wake up in a couple of days, you pour your cup of coffee. What are you reading right now? What is your morning read when you start your day to kind of get a landscape on what that day looks like for you? What are you interested in right now?
You know, I'm very grateful I woke up. I have a real problem with the drool on the pillow there, getting that. Every morning I wake up, I really don't watch the news. I go into my office and I start working on my papers. And about noon, I start catching up with what's happening in the world. And usually it's bad news, except for ARG. My stocks are just going straight south. I hate that. What I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning in Kentucky. Okay, I got a couple thousand acres up in Kentucky. I go up there every Thursday. I'm up there with my dogs. We have a herd of cattle. I have my geese, my chickens, all this stuff. I have to worry about serious things.
Why does Lisa Nelson say you're the second coming of Dr. Doolittle? Why does she say that?
Of Dr. who?
Dr. Doolittle.
I've got a lot of animals. I used to have, when I lived in California, I had one of the best private tree collections in the country. And I had animals. I had macaw aviaries. I had alligators. I had, all sorts of animals, rheas, emus, Pinkachus, Guatemondis.
With the talent of being able to talk to animals, Dr. Laffer, which is one I never expected, give me, where are you thinking? We're seeing in Florida approximately 1,200 to 1,300 people moving here a day. And I like to credit that to the legislature and the governor, but really we're the ones that make the laws, along with the people that are moving here and the investment in our own state. But some of these other states, and we saw it with redistricting and who was losing or who should have lost some congressional seats or maybe a couple more than they did, but where are you seeing these more liberal states, economically speaking? What does the future look like for them? We talk about the pros in Florida and Tennessee and Utah and Kansas and all these states that are doing so well. What do you see for maybe some of those that are towards the bottom of your rich states, poor states rankings?
Let me, if I can, you should infer the future from the past. Now, George Romney, governor of Michigan, just for one example, I think it was 1967, put in the income tax. They had a corporate tax in Detroit. In 1950, Detroit's population was 1.85 million. Today it's 600 million. It's 1.85 million. Now it's 600,000. There's been a collapse there. It's been going down ever since when I was a kid. My mom and dad from Cleveland used to take me by train on a vacation to Detroit, which was the Paris of North America, if you can imagine that. There's this death spiral going on in a lot of these states, and all the states there. You can list them there. I did this paper, The 7 Deadly Tax the Rich States, which if anyone you'd like, just email me, or maybe the person who's going to email me.
Exactly. I was going to say, email the guy to the guy to the guy.
Yeah, that's right.
And
but you know how to do that, guys.
Dr. Laffer, I remember from a conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember when we were in Miami, 2 years ago, or maybe last year, I don't remember, but you had spoken to me about New Jersey, and you had said, at one point in time, New Jersey was the perfect example of how to run a state. And if we're looking today, it's probably on the opposite side of the spectrum.
In New Jersey in 1965, had neither an income tax nor a sales tax. It was one of the fastest growing states in the nation. People from everywhere were migrating into New Jersey. It was incredible. It had a balanced budget with all that. Look at it now. After before Chris Christie took over, and Chris did a good job of vetoing a lot of tax increases, but John Corzine was the governor of New Jersey, if you remember. He was one of my students at the University of Chicago. Okay. Just for the record, a C student. and in all honesty, Danny, just to be transparent, after seeing his performance at MF Global, I'm not even sure he earned the C, if you know what I mean.
I'm with you.
They had the highest property taxes, highest income taxes, highest sales taxes, slowest growing state. People were leaving it like rats out of a sinking ship, and they had a big budget deficit. Taxes have consequences. And whatever we want to talk about, if you have two locations, A and B, if you raise taxes in B and you lower them in A, producers and manufacturers and people are going to move from B to A. It ain't rocket surgery, people. It's simple. Steve Moore and I have been, and Jonathan Williams have been doing this ranking of the states for years, and you can see how it is, and it's working out perfectly. You guys are doing a great job, don't get me wrong, but there is one state in the nation that attracts net adjusted gross income
Let me
from
guess.
Florida.
Tennessee?
Oh, what you got it.
But how does that work? And you know, I want to know how much Stuart Adams is paying you under the table for Utah to keep that #1 spot for so damn long.
You didn't know that Steve Moore is a Mormon, did you?
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm sure we have a lot of people from Utah here. But Utah, they do so. Where are they? They do. And I tell you, if I ever leave Florida, I love Tennessee, but if I ever leave Florida, I'm moving to Utah.
Can I tell one cute story? Ezra Taft Benson was a very close friend of the family's. My mom was a delegate for Taft, Bob Taft, in 1952. And Ezra Taft Benson, as you may know, was Eisenhower's Secretary of Agriculture. And so I went to see him when I was running for the Senate, and he's a great friend of the family and all that. And he then was the prophet. And we were sitting there talking, and he said, "Laffer, stop right there. If you'll convert today, the church will endorse you." And I said, "You know, sir, if it were a closer race, I'd really consider it." What a wonderful man. What a great
that would have been a
humor.
great decision. Well, as we get here towards an end, Kathy, I would love for you to leave us with, you know, what could ALEC be focusing on over the next 50 years? You know, this is our 50th year. This is our annual conference for the 50th year. We have a gala in DC towards the end of the year to celebrate our 50th anniversary. Our principles have been consistent. I mean, limited government, free markets, federalism, and we're going to stand on those principles moving forward. But the next 50 years, I think, are going to have a more significant change than the previous 50. And we don't want to focus on the prior 50. You want to look forward, as Dr. Laffer said. No. What are some of the things, economically speaking, however it is that you have in your mind, that ALEC should focus on over the next 50?
Well, I do believe, again, starting with education, we need to get on the right side of change and encourage this change, right? You know, it's so interesting to watch what's going on with the digital asset world, crypto, and to see that innovation leaving our shores. It is going away because of the SEC, Chairman Gensler, and thank God we have a government of checks and balances, and that the judicial branch of the government and the legislative branch are now challenging that executive branch, because I'm seeing a lot of young people they would never have left the United States. They wouldn't. But the US is not allowing this innovation to occur. The regulations, we have so many regulators, first of all, and they're fighting with each other for power, whether it's the SEC and the CFTC. So I'd follow the Laffer plan: lower taxes, lower government spending, lower regulations, encouraging trade, and staying on the right side of change when it comes to innovation. I think this is critically important now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Dr. Laffer, here as we close up, I'm going to consider you one of our founding fathers of ALEC. I think you're such a smart man, and we really appreciate everything that you're doing for us. The next 50 years, Dr. Laffer's projection of the next 50 years for ALEC, hit me.
Well, I don't know about for ALEC, but what I would hope you would do is balance up, not down. This is the whole thing. The problem in this world is not rich people. The problem in this world is poor people. And the dream in America, the dream for ALEC, should be making the poor rich, not making the rich poor. Balance up, not down. The problem in America is not that some people have privilege. The problem in America is that some people don't have privilege. And you need to make sure we always balance up. And when I look at the other side of the ledger, I look at the anti-ALECs in this world, and there are a lot of them out there.
Sure are.
I look at them as always trying to balance down. They're always trying to get even. They're always trying to stop bullying. And all of that's, stopping bullying is right. But make sure you don't forget that your job is really to make sure that people have the opportunity. There are a group of people in our society who have not shared in the prosperity that we have all so blessedly been given. It is our job to create the prosperity. Enterprise zones. Don't make it welfare where you have a welfare trap and you have a ceiling. You have a poverty trap. What you want to do is have enterprise zones in the inner cities to allow people to go up, not with tracked welfare. Make sure you're always making it better for the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised, not making it worse for those who are successful. Our dream, please, and please stay, ALEC, balancing up, not down.
What a great way to end the panel. I want to, on behalf of ALEC and Lisa Nelson, I wanted to say thank you guys for being here. How this came together, I don't know, but it was meant to be. And having you guys has been a true honor.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Danny.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage Lisa Nelson.
Thank you so much. What fun, what fun. And I had a whole segue about Dr. Doolittle right now, and that conversation just leads us right to it. It's perfect for our next guest. Someone who can understand the type of passion for our four-footed friends is Julie Castle. She's been with us before. She's born and raised in Bountiful, Utah. Julie's walked an unusual path. Straight out of law school, she visited a shelter run by the Best Friends Animal Society. Those furry little faces captured her heart, and she's been a lifer ever since. In the decades since, she's created mobile animal clinics, super pet adoption campaigns, and earned a spot on InStyle magazine's Badass 50. I thought I was the badass. That's what Danny keeps calling me, but you are now the Badass 50. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome back Julie Castle.
Okay, so wow, following Kathy Wood is quite the thing. It's pretty rare that you have somebody who sees the future like she does. So what a treat that was to hear her today. So I'm Julie Castle. I'm the CEO of Best Friends Animal Society, and I am from Utah. And our organization was founded about 40 years ago by a group of friends who had the grit and determination to carve out what's now on almost 40,000 acres, which is a ranch in southern Utah near Zion National Park. And they did this with their own hands. And the thing is, the organization has grown way beyond Utah. And in fact, we've got life-saving centers all over the country. But the thing that makes Best Friends truly unique is that innovation piece, that they could see the future, that they knew that back then in our municipal shelters, 17 million animals were losing their lives every year. And so we set out to create a network of shelters all across the country, which has made us really special, because we have reach into nearly every community in this country. And those are the communities that are governed by state and local government. And the animals that are dying in America's shelters today, you know what the biggest barrier is for us? It's not that people don't want to adopt. It's not really that people don't want to spay and neuter their pets. There are other issues that contribute to it, but the biggest issue are terrible laws and policies. Terrible laws and policies lead to animals dying in shelters. And I'll ask you, like I ask everybody else, how many people have a picture of their pet on your phone? Okay, like everybody in the place raises their hand. That's because 80% of Americans have pets. Your constituents care about this issue. They care about saving the lives of dogs and cats in America's shelters. And we are sort of the modern day Dr. Dolittle, I will say. And we are really focused on changing those bad laws and policies. For example, this year, we had a couple of really huge wins. In Texas, Governor Abbott signed a law that prevented breed discriminatory legislation or breed discrimination in public housing. And basically that means that there are laws in this country that say if your dog looks like a certain breed, then you can't have that dog, which is insane that we have laws like that. Well, that passed in Texas, and here in Florida, Ron DeSantis, similar situation, except that Miami-Dade and Sunrise had this terrible breed ban that had been in place for almost 40 years. That got overturned, as well as the entire state no longer has a breed ban. So the last way that you can really help, and come and visit our booth because we've got the best swag in the whole joint, is cats. Cats die in shelters in very large numbers. And would you believe that some places have leash laws for cats? I mean, if I tried to put a leash on my cat, I wouldn't have any eyeballs. So if you want to help save the lives of cats, come and visit our booth because we have an alternative to spending money on going out, seeing a cat that's not on a leash, rounding it up and killing it, and spending taxpayer dollars to do that. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happens, and by leveraging our policymakers and the work that you all do, we can save a lot of lives together, and we can truly get to the day where when Best Friends was started, 17 million animals were dying. We're at about 380,000 now. We can solve this. This is a cause that everybody can get behind, and I promise you, your constituents are very passionate about it. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you at our Yappy Hour.
Please welcome back to the stage, Lisa Nelson.
It's hard to imagine, but these are real issues, and I hope you will get passionate about this because Julie's been working on this tirelessly. I know there are some policy discussions even just this week here at ALEC in our task forces on that. And make sure you do go to that Yappy Hour later this afternoon. It'll be fun. When it comes to understanding what to think, how to think, and even the statistics that Julie was sharing about how many people have animals, there's nobody like Scott Rasmussen. We always like to save him till the end. I know he doesn't like it, but we save him till the end because we know you're all going to stay here and listen to everything he says because he really understands what is on the minds of American constituents. Born in Florida's Gulf Coast, one of Scott's first role models was hockey legend Gordie Howe. Known as much for scoring goals as he was for starting fights, some might have suggested it was Howe who inspired Scott to adopt his take no prisoners approach. A few years after selling his foundational stake in ESPN, Scott started running polls on a variety of issues for friends. Never affiliating with one party or another, he maintains his independence to provide the cleanest reporting possible. Ladies and gentlemen, our good friend at ALEC, Scott Rasmussen.
Well, thank you. And Gordie Howe was my childhood idol, and the best moment of my professional life, even a little better than speaking at ALEC, was I got to be the MC at his 50th birthday, standing at center ice in the spotlight with Gordie, truly magical moment. He got a 9-minute standing ovation and told me jokes the whole time. But that's not what you want to hear about today. Over the last couple of decades, I have probably spent more time reviewing public opinion polling data than anybody. And what I've come to believe might surprise some of you, especially with some of the conversations I've heard. And I feel like I have to offer this as a confession. I'm an optimist. I believe without any doubt that America's best days are still to come. Our children, and if I'm ever blessed to have grandchildren, will live better lives than we can ever imagine. And the reason I say that, I loved what Kathy Wood said about innovation, but the reason I believe it is when I look at the data, despite what you have heard, the American people remain firmly committed to the founding ideals of freedom, equality, and self-governance. That is something deeply embedded in our culture. Now, since I'm an optimist, I could just stand up here for 10 minutes or so and give you happy talk. I can tell you that most voters think we should have more charter schools, and most voters like vouchers. And boy, you talk about education savings accounts, and you get up to 2 out of 3 people like it, and people who care about it the most, people with kids at home, they're even more excited. And I could go on and on telling you what you want to hear, but that's not my job. I'm usually the one who has to be a little bit of a Debbie Downer. I'm supposed to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And I do think that while our best days are still to come, it will get worse before it gets better. There is a sustained attack on America's founding ideals, and it is having an impact. We need to defend those ideals, we need to restore them and move forward. And that's going to require a lot of work by people in this room, and bluntly, it's going to require people talking about things a little bit differently and looking at the world differently. I was speaking with John Carson from Georgia yesterday about the great Iowa school choice bill. And what I told him about it was after that bill passed, public support for it went down. Even though there's an overwhelming response, people wanting to take part in the program, public support went down. Why? Well, it's because once it passed, all the opposition voices shrieked loudly and talked about all the concerns and raised concerns that voters hadn't fully understood at first or maybe hadn't heard about. And people who passed the bill were saying, we won. They weren't continuing to sell it. When you have a victory like that, you have to keep on selling. And that's just part of the ongoing process that we need to think about. There's been lots of great progress in the nation in the last year, but we got to keep building on that. But here's the other part. We're really good at taking very popular ideas. People who believe in freedom are really good at taking popular ideas and making them sound unpopular. We can take a great policy and turn it into a losing issue better than any group of people I've ever met. And it's something we need to work on. And so I've got some pointers, 5 points to talk about, to think about as the way you might be better at communicating. And the first rule, this is an ironclad rule, never, ever, ever talk to anybody in the real world about an issue the way you talk about it at this conference or in your state capital or in any political environment. We live in a bubble. The language we use, the words we use, don't mean anything in the real world. If I was putting it in a more positive way, which I should, it's you should always strive to speak in the language of everyday Americans. What does that mean? Well, the first thing you need to understand, only 8% of voters talk politics every day. 5 times as many pray every day. Politics is not the most important thing in people's lives. You need to understand that. You have their attention for only a short moment of time. When we talk about terms like CRT, most people don't know what it means. Everybody here, that's an emotional word. It packs a lot of baggage. But you know, we go out and ask people, do you have a favorable or an unfavorable opinion of CRT or critical race theory? We spell it out different ways. And a lot of people who say they have a favorable opinion of it say we should never teach our children that America was founded on slavery and racism. They don't connect with the words and the language that we use. So the first thing is always get rid of the acronyms, get rid of the labels that we use. People don't know what woke means. Get rid of these terms and describe policies in the way that a normal person would think about them. Second, you got to have confidence. The American people are with us on a broad range of issues. Sometimes our conversation tends to go in the direction of we are the remnant, we are losing, we are fighting, we are the minority, we don't know how we're going to overcome this terrible thing. That's not true. You know, if you talk about CRT, nobody knows what you're talking about. But if you start to talk about on the education issue, education, and you talk about the fact that, hey, by the way, it's not just the mechanics of a voucher program that matter, it is really important to focus on making sure every child has the best possible education rather than supporting public schools. Well, you know what? People are with us by a 2-to-1 margin on that. They want to support public schools. People want public schools to work, but their priority is with the students. So we need to have some confidence, and in doing that, it means we don't pick petty fights. We are happy to have the other side make arguments that somehow everything about America is wrong because people aren't buying it. What we have to do is provide the counter. We need to provide the positive, confident answer and know that people are with us. And that's the next thing. We should always, always be positive. Every issue you deal with, you can put in a negative context or in a positive context. If you're talking about transgender issues, you can attack trans activists and you can talk about all the terrible things that are going on. Or if you want to connect with people the way they think about it, you can say we want to protect women, we want to protect children, we don't think boys should be allowed in the girls' locker room. We don't think biological males should be allowed in the girls' restroom. You know, these are really basic things. You don't need to get into the details, but you want to always look for that positive explanation of where you're going. We want to connect directly with what the issue is that we're talking about. I heard a presidential candidate saying, really strong commitment to education, and therefore what we need to do is we need to beat up on the labor unions. Well, I got to tell you what, most Americans, when you ask them about education, don't think of labor unions or the teachers union as the obstacle. They don't even make a connection between that. If you're talking about education, you want to talk about how you're going to provide each child with the best educational opportunity. And this is really something we lose sight of a lot because we get caught up in these inner battles. You know, in the suffrage movement, giving women the right to vote, and by the way, that began in Wyoming in 1869, was the first to give women the right to vote. Half of America was voting before Congress allegedly gave women the right to vote. But in half the congressional districts, women had the right to vote at that time. The big enemy were the liquor companies, because the liquor companies thought women would all vote for prohibition. But you know what? They didn't make the argument based on those beer companies are evil. They made the argument on here's why women should have the right to vote. We need to connect with the issues at hand and put them in a positive manner. And finally, sometimes we have a tendency, this was a big mistake the Trump administration made on selling the tax cuts. We have a tendency to say, this will put more money in your pocket. This is in your self-interest. And that's nice. People like to have more money in their pocket. People like to have issues they care about resolved in a positive manner. But it's more than that. You want to talk about the positive impact on the community because people care about the people around them. And you want to talk about how your policies connect with America's great founding ideals. Those are the ways that you begin to sell ideas to people. You talk about them in a positive way. You talk about them in a way that benefits the community that we live in. What I would suggest is that you think about these 5 points, have someone on your team do a check-in every now and then when you're in a debate or when you're in a media environment or when you're talking to somebody at a town hall. Are you communicating in these ways? Because if you are, it's really not so much about what party you're on or the details of the legislation. You're connecting with people on things they believe in. They believe in freedom, equality, and self-governance. They believe in the type of policies that you want to advocate, but you need to put them in a context that makes sense outside of the legislative environment. You know, when I was a kid at the Jersey Shore, my grandparents taught me that before you ride your first wave, you need to find a landmark. And the reason for that was when you took that wave, the current would take you either north or south. You had to get back to your landmark before taking the next wave, or else pretty soon you'd be so far down the coast you might crash into a jetty or lose your grandparents or something like that. So it was a discipline instilled in us. That's what you need to do when you're speaking in public. Pick your landmark, pick your issues, pick the way you want to talk about it. And then and nobody's perfect at doing this, after each presentation, after each encounter, check your landmark, get back and see how well you're doing. And if you can do these 5 things, if you can stay on target and speak in the language of everyday Americans, not the language of the political world, have confidence that the people are with you, be positive, present everything in the most positive way you can, not in the attack mode. If you can connect the issue that you're talking about with the concerns that voters have, the way they think about it, and then if you can talk about it, how it fits in the context of America, how the policies help not just the individual, but the community, and help support our founding ideals. If you can do those things, not only will you communicate and sell your ideas better, but you will have all done your part to ensure that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that. Very, very informative. We're going to conclude our morning session, but I want to give you guys a layout of the land over the next several hours so that you guys can go forth and conquer. We're going to have, starting at 9:15, so it's literally in 3 minutes, we're going to have building on the momentum for education freedom in the Mediterranean Ballroom 1 and 2. We're going to have how states can hit the brakes on inflation in Mediterranean Ballroom 3. A revolution in modern day entertainment, fantasy sports in Mediterranean Ballroom 6 and 7. And then starting at 10:30, we're going to have the educational choice movement, red, blue, or purple, in Mediterranean Ballroom 1 and 2. No room for trafficking in Mediterranean Ballroom 3. And AI, the role for government and impacts on jobs, elections, and information in Mediterranean Ballroom 6 and 7. Thank you guys for being with us this morning. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.